Okay, so I've had a few lattes, and I usually get really excited when I present, so I'm sorry if I go even faster this morning. So thank you for coming, and we're going to be talking about how you transform your bank SOA into API superstars. Now, I know what you're thinking, and I thought the same thing, because I asked Mady, when he asked me to speak, I'm like, what do you want me to speak about? I mean, I can do like inspirational speak, or we can do a technical speak, and he goes, well, I know this is not going to be sexy, but based on last year's survey, I need somebody to speak on how you move from SOAP to REST. And I said, okay, all right, I'll do it, but I will try to make it exciting. And so it's going to be fast-paced, so you're going to have to listen. So there is no need to curl up with this guy. I fell in love with sloths ever since Zootopia. I don't know if anybody saw that, but I love the sloth in there. So cute. So I'm going to, in 20 minutes or less, I'm going to speak to you about 4 recommended practices or tips on how to move from a SOA-based architecture, or how to leverage your SOA-based architecture and move to the API economy. So 4 in 20. The first one, let's set the landscape. Okay. Now, I work with a lot of banks and financial institutions in the U.S., and this is part of my day-to-day job, going in and helping them make this transition. Okay. So in this room, since you're in this room, I could probably guess you are a fairly large financial institution. Okay. And you've been doing SOA since the mid-2000s, right? All right, and you have at least one ESB. How many people have more than one ESB? Because most of the banks I deal with have probably like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 ESBs in all different flavors, right? They have pretty much every vendor you could possibly think of. They have very skilled SOAP and, yes, COBOL employees. In fact, a lot of the banks, one of their #1 challenges for the next 2 years in the US, at least, is the retirement of all their COBOL programmers, and they don't know what they're going to do. I said my dad is going to have a really healthy retirement consulting. You have over 100 services, and I'm generous here. What I mean by generous is most of them have over thousands of APIs and services, and mostly they are point-to-point, even though they have the ESBs. Go figure. And none of them are documented for consumption. I've asked, can you send me some of your SOAP services? And they send these massive technical documentations. But even after reading it, I still didn't know how to invoke the darn thing, right? So I'm like, give me an example. Just give me an example, request and response, which are absent in any of the documentation. Few of them have services exposed to external partners. I mean, these are usually the payment branch and so forth. And again, those services that are exposed to their external partners are not meant for consumption. So when they did that integration, it had to be, here's my developer, where's your developer, let's get them talking on the phone, email exchanges, and that's how they got the things hooked up. So that's the landscape that I work in pretty much every day. Now, so my first bit of advice, you need to organize for change, okay? Your existing organization structure will probably not take you where you need to go for many reasons, too many reasons to go into, and I got to check my time here in the 20 minutes. But just to give you a hint, well, first of all, the organization structured is not incentivized for the change that you need to make, okay? They're still incentivized on the old plan, the old way of doing things. In order to make this change, you need to create an organization that has new incentives, new ways of doing things, right? There's political structures and things involved in your current organization. You need to shake up those political alliances. There are processes and things that need to be shaken up in order to really move to where you want to go. So you're going to have to organize for change. The second thing, my second bit of advice, is you need to master the mindset. When I go and you hear panels and everything we talked about today, the technology is the easy bit. It is so easy compared to the non-technical bits. In order to master, to move from SOA to APIs, 75% of your transformation is going to be non-technical. So how do you master the mindset? How do you build that organization that's going to take you forward? You need to understand your team members, okay? And I go in and I can identify when I go in to talk to customers, I use the Winnie the Pooh personalities, right? I block them into, this is very, you can Google this. I mean, there's a lot of documentation on this, but I learned this probably back in, I'm going to kill myself on this chair, back in my early days at IBM, when I worked at IBM, we went through this class. But you need to find your Tiggers, right? And I was a Tigger. I totally was a Tigger. You know, you're eager, adventurous, you're an early adopter, you're an evangelist, you're ready to go, you jump on new things all the time, okay? Tiggers have their disadvantages, though. They jump too quickly. We jump without looking, and we can go into potentials without thinking of all the potential dangers. And so you need to make sure you have Tiggers, and these Tiggers become your visionaries. They're the ones that go out and look and so forth. And you don't want to have an organization all full of Tiggers, because you know what? Your organization is going to get whiplash, and you're never going to know what to do, because they're kind of ADD like that, okay? One of the key ones that I like to find is the piglets, okay? The piglets are quiet, right? They're very quietly intelligent. They're timid. They can be brave when somebody helps them, okay? But they're more of the calm structure in the whole business. But they're very, very smart. I like to find those guys when I go into an organization. Then you have your Christopher Robins. They're your real leaders, right? They're the ones that are going to be able to balance the Tigger, find the ideas that are really good from the Tigger, and then balance and help the piglets bring up and bring a calm to your organization. What you don't want to have, you got to watch out for your Eeyores, okay? You're dealing with employees that are from SOAP and COBOL, and you're going to have those Eeyores, and you don't want to put Eeyores together, because you know what? Misery loves company, and it spreads like a virus. So know who your Eeyores are, block them off, you know, and make sure you move your company forward. I mean, they've got the technical value, but you just, you know, they're pessimistic. They're every good idea that you have, they'll shoot it down. They'll use sarcasm, which I know in England, my husband's English, so I can pick on the English, because my husband, I pick him on all the time. He is so sarcastic and pessimist. Will be hard for you to determine, you know, what's going on there. But you just got to protect against those Eeyores. So when you're building a new organization, it's really, there's a book that I've read, and I forget the name of it, but you really got to have your visionaries in there, your Tiggers, and you have to have what's called an integrator, someone that can filter, or your Christopher Robin, somebody that can filter and control the ideas and implement the ideas of the Tigger, because the Tigger is going to come up with so many different ideas, and they're going to want to jump, and they're going to want to do. They're always constant going. But if your organization is always constant going, you're never going to get to implementation. Okay. On the converse side, if you have an organization full of that's a Christopher Robins or a Piglet, you might not get the ideas that you need to get going. So it's a delicate balance between, you know, having Tiggers and Piglets and Christopher Robins and dealing with those Eeyores, okay? So it's very, and there's more cast of characters, but I just picked those ones out. So it's interesting, go read it. All right, so third bit of advice. Okay, so we need to address the skills gap. Okay, and I'm not talking just the technical team skills gap. I'm talking through the whole organization, making sure your business knows what's going on, all the way down to the technical people to understand why this is important to the business. Now, from 2002 through probably this year, I thought the API economy was doing well. It was the first time that businesses understood a technical concept, because we could point to Netflix, we could point to eBay, we could point to all these customers, all these, you know, modern companies on, you know what, this is a technical thing. This API is a technical thing, and it's helping the business, and it's bringing value. So business is getting that idea, okay? We can't stop aligning the APIs with the business. Okay, you have to keep pushing that. You have to keep aligning with it. What I'm seeing now is, and it takes a new breed of technical leaders, right? It's a new, you know, a new architect that can really keep that alignment. That's what SOA was missing, that really alignment and the value to the business. We've got the line to the value to the business. We need to keep it going. The issue I see is now everybody's so excited about microservices, and being technical people, we're ready to just jump and glob on to containers and registries and self-auto-connect and focus on talking to the business about why we should be doing microservices instead of why we should be doing APIs. Microservices is just an implementation of it. So make sure you keep educating yourself and the business, all right? We don't want to lose that momentum that we started in 2012. So to close the skill gap, there's several different things that I've been using. One is hands-on education through internal hackathons. And in several banks, we've been doing a quarterly hackathon, taking those COBOL developers, taking those SOAP developers, and instead of sending them to a class, we give them a mission. Right? A mission that runs 2 to 3 days during the workday, not on the weekend, during the workday. And we give them education on what Node.js is. We give them education on how to build a proper API. And we give them a mission, for example, like in consumer banking or an omni-channel, and say, hey, you have these 3 days, come up with something and pitch it and align it to the business. So we're getting these technical people to try new technologies and then also align it to business and see the value. And it's worked so great. In this one company we started a year and a half ago, and those same SOAP developers, COBOL developers that, on their day job, that's what they do, they've come to these hackathons, and now they're excited, they're motivated, and the company is ready to take it to the next level. They're self-educating. So I would suggest another thing is participating in external hackathons. Have your developers go and do something, implement something in a hands-on way. Now, one of the other interesting things, and with these internal hackathons that we've been doing, we've involved the business too, not just the technical people. So we brought in UX designers, right, to partner with each of the teams. We've brought in the biz dev areas of the bank and really made teams in the hackathons that represent a product of a service. Okay. One of the other things about closing the skill gap that we are trying at several of the banks is implanting what we call burst team members, right? So these are kind of like your Tiggers into each one of the teams, from the business on down to the technical. And these are the ones that get the idea and they can burst and give the team a head start. Okay. So number 4, make technology decisions based on business needs and impacts. This is incredibly important. Okay, there's more than one way to cook an egg. Okay, if you are given the requirements that you have to feed 1,000 people in a half an hour eggs, and you only have a griddle that's about this big, you have a stove with a pot on it. Okay. The other requirement is you only have access to that kitchen 15 minutes before all these people come in, but on that day. But before that day, you can use the kitchen whatever you want. So what type of egg are you going to make? For 1,000 people, and you only have a half hour to feed them, are you going to make them sunny side up eggs? Do you think you're going to get the job done? Right? But everybody loves sunny side up eggs, right? Because they're cool, they're yummy. You can dip your toast in them and stuff. But that's not going to feed them, right? What you probably should do, if you're a chef, you would make use of the pot, put some water in, and you make the eggs, hard-boiled eggs, the day before. So you get to that day, you have a half hour to feed these 1,000 people, you hand them all out hard-boiled eggs. You've met the requirements. It was a strong business need. If you would have went with a sunny side up egg, half of your people, or more than half of your people, probably wouldn't have got fed, and you would have missed your business requirement. So you have to make decisions based on your business requirement. All right, so let's do an illustration in a technical sense, okay? You want to go from SOAP to REST. Okay, you've got 3 different options. You can do an exact translation of SOAP to REST, and we'll go through these in detail. You can establish a proper API layer, or you can completely create a new API. Okay, so let's take a look at why. So if we take a look at the exact translation of SOAP service to a RESTful facade. First, if you have a SOAP operation called get all accounts, basically what you do is you make a facade on it, and you say it goes to post. All your operations become post, and it's V1, get all accounts, okay? So why would you do this? Because of business pressure, right? You've got a business partner that says, hey, I want a REST API, and I want it tomorrow or in a week, and you have lack of resource skills to build this API properly, lack of time, and you need to rely heavily on the embedded logic in that SOAP-based service. The benefits of this is that it gets done quickly. There are gateway tools like the Akana gateway where you can just basically take your SOAP service, apply a policy, and you're done, and you've got a REST API. It doesn't disturb your existing applications or infrastructures. So those are the few benefits. The negatives is you're not going to win any sexiest API awards, right? You're going to have to still have crazy amount of documentation. It's not going to be easy to understand. And basically, you're exposing your back-end mess, okay? And you still have to maintain all your technical debt, and you still have to invest in an infrastructure. So you got to look at the negatives. But if your requirement is you need to get this out next week, right? And you can solve it by placing a policy on it and get it out there, it might be a viable option. Not that I like it, it might be a viable option. The next thing is, and I debated on which order to do these, the new one or the create a completely new one or layer have a proper API layer. Now, having a proper API layer is what I would suggest, just based on what we heard all this week, right? A lot of the first few hackathons that we did with organizations, they took a look at their SOAP services and they said, you know what, I'm going to expose this SOAP service. But there was a bunch of junk in that SOAP service that was not needed by the consumers. And they didn't take a look at how their consumers would be using it. They just said, oh, these would be cool services to turn into APIs, okay? But when you take put a proper API layer in it, you take a look from the stance top down and you say, what does our consumer want? Okay, what does our consumer want first? And then go out and find the services or build the services that you need to fulfill what the information that your consumer wants. So why would you do it this way? Because your company is taking a consumer focused approach to building their products. It could be part of an existing product offering. You want to establish a long-term strategic API strategy. You want to transition into more of a software type company. A lot of banks are trying to become more of a software type company. You want flexibility of back-end providers, and it enables the eventual retirement of technical debt. You can leverage the technical debt and then easily replace it. Benefits. You could potentially win the Sexiest API Award. It provides consistency for how your consumers interact with all of your APIs, right? So if they understand how you work with one API, most likely if you're consistent about it, they'll understand how to work with your other APIs, okay? It doesn't expose your back-end mess. You want to hide that back-end mess. You don't, when family comes over to visit, I close my kids' doors because I don't want them to see the bedrooms because they're a mess. And it's the same type of approach. The negatives is you need skilled API designers, right? And that's a skill. It's an art to design those APIs. I've seen very theoretically correct APIs, but are absolutely unusable. Okay, so you really need to have skilled API designers. It takes too much time, and like I said, you could potentially have somebody that designs theoretically correct APIs, which are unusable, and that's a negative too. The good thing about the API layer is you can still make use of your existing assets and logic, right, that you've invested in. And so as discussed on the panel, you can leverage a large portion of that and get ahead. Now, you can generate, the third one is create completely new APIs, right? So maybe you have a greenfield product that you're doing, or you decide that, you know what, the logic we've got to make so much changes to the back-end logic of this SOAP service that we were going to uplift it anyway, so why don't I create a new a completely new API. You can get it to market quickly. Again, you need skilled set of teams to do that. Removes organizational issues. right? That's a big benefit too. If you, like, as I said before, if you want to make a massive change, you got to deal with that organization, and most likely your current organization is not going to work. So this would remove some of the organizational issues. You don't have to worry about any legacy technical debt, and you can start establishing new standards and skills. So again, this option, you potentially win the sexiest API award. You have no legacy constraints. You have speed to market. Negatives. One of the negatives of this one, you need to organize your team. You need to have a team that's skilled, but the infrastructure, right? You need to be able to select the appropriate tools and the infrastructure and get those approved within your organization, which can be daunting to do. I wanted to bring up microservices as a way of implementing these new APIs. Even the existing APIs or wrapping this existing APIs. A lot of organizations are jumping on the microservices bandwagon, and I want to caution you about that. And notice I didn't put up a definition of microservices, because when I go into each organization and each bank, financial institution, microservices means something different to everyone, and it should be based on your business needs. Do you think Netflix went and said one day, you know what? Let's create this thing called microservices and then implement it. No, they built it over time based on their business needs. Do you have the same needs as Netflix? Do you have the same needs as Airbnb? You'd like to think so, but maybe not right now. So do you need to put in the infrastructure right now to handle it? Because this kind of reminds me, and this goes back to why I was harped on earlier before. Think about your business needs and what you need to do, and make sure you continually educate to your business what the value of the APIs are, okay? We don't want to get into that whole thing about SOA where everybody said, okay, we're going to do it. We have a SOA because we have an ESB. We've got 7 ESBs. You know, they put in the ESB before they even had the requirement for it because they wanted to do something technically cool, and so that they could say they were doing SOA. So make sure you put in the infrastructure that you actually need. All right, so making it all work together. Now, I'm pretty sure you guys are going to end up with all 3 of those things that I talked about. You are going to, wrap existing SOAP services as is. You're going to extract it. You're going to have it, guaranteed. You are going to be creating API layer. You're going to start establishing that, and you're going to be creating APIs from scratch. So you need to make it all work together. Now, this is the one thing about microservices that I think is great. Okay, one of the tenets of microservices is that cross-cutting concerns should be handled at a higher level, and this deals with security, authentication, orchestration, things like that, monitoring, analytics. All of those things need to be handled at a higher level. So this is what I contend is an architecture of a digital enterprise that can leverage that existing SOA infrastructure, but take it to the next level. So starting with, you have the interaction layer, which is the API and services gateway, right? That really controls all the interactions inside and outside your organization. That interaction layer interacts with your traditional integration layer, which would be your ESB, where like heavy duty service mediation and message processing happens. It interacts with your application layer where you're doing your process organization, your sense and response, and so forth. And then it also interacts down with your information layer. Now, this interaction layer also controls and manages the cross-cutting concerns of your microservices. So as you can see, the interaction layer really leverages your existing infrastructure. Now, it also manages the interactions outside the enterprise. So you've got all of your consumers and so forth. The interaction layer then works with your existing security services, integrating with your single sign-on and your access control systems, but it also layers on the modern, authentication, authorization, threat protections, data privacy, and PCI. It integrates with your analytics services, adding in API analytics, and it has the management services over here, so it can help manage your APIs and your services and things that are into your traditional integration layer and your application layer. And finally, the modern architecture, enterprise reference architecture, will have developer services where you'll have developer portals that focus on internal communities, external communities, and partners. So this is the architecture of the future, of today, actually. So Akana provides this architecture, provides all these capabilities, and you can come back and see us in the booth back there. But in the end, what I've just said all comes down to what you guys already know. Organize for change, master the mindset, address the skills gap, and make technical decisions based on business needs. But we all need to remember these things. So it comes down to people, process, and technologies. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. We'll go with one quick question.
I answered it all.
So then tell us a little bit about the, so there's this constant feedback loop that's necessary that didn't exist with SOAP, where every step of the way when you do have some successes, you need to be finding ways to share that across the organisation as well.
Yeah, we were talking about, we had those metrics. I forget who put the metrics up there earlier, and you showed it today. We actually had those metrics. We had the idea of those metrics back in the SOA days, because I've been with SOA since it was born. Nobody just really knew how to get the metrics and how to present the metrics to the business, right? We were technical people. We didn't understand what the business wanted. Now, today, we have the tools and the knowledge that we need to provide this to the business, and we're getting closer and closer to the business, and that's my cautionary tale that, you know what, we were getting very close to the business in 2012 through now, but I'm a little worried we could get distracted back on technology things because it's cool, it's fun, it's easy. Not so easy to talk up to the business. So.
Okay, cool. So beware the microservices frenzy, really, around getting too into that. Okay, cool. Thanks again, Laura.